A few years ago, a woman named Hannah would make quite the name for herself on social media when she began uploading very adorable slice-of-life content from down on the farm, featuring herself, her husband, her multiple kids, 8 in total, her ducks and other farm animals, and this was all located on their ranch, Ballerina Farm, named after Hannah's own love for ballet, which will come into play later. In these videos, Hannah is often dressed like she came straight out of a time machine from the 18th century. There's a very rustic, old-school feeling to these videos, and as we watch her gently kneading dough or milking cows, even though the video is clearly filmed on an iPhone, it gives the viewer a momentary escape into simpler times. But not everybody was happy for Hannah's God-loving little house on the prairie homestead life. In fact, the potent hostility that currently surrounds the farm has been a viral sensation across the globe these past few weeks. It started with people just hating Hannah. A lot of women in particular criticized Hannah for setting an unrealistic expectation of what motherhood looks like. She faced particular backlash when she glamorized a skinny waist competing in the Miss American beauty pageant just 2 weeks after giving birth. You're not supposed to be hot after having a baby, that's illegal. But mostly, she's been criticized for glamorizing the tradwife lifestyle. If you're unfamiliar with the term tradwife, I'm sure you can guess that it stands for traditional wife. In modern adaptation, this is a woman who doesn't have a career or work outside of the home. A tradwife takes on the old school traditions of maintaining the home and doing the majority of child rearing while the husband provides financially. Now, they aren't always, but these families do tend to be pretty religious and dress conservatively, or at the very least, cottagecore meets Mennonite. Many women warn against the tradwife life, citing the dangers of being too reliant on someone financially. The internet has no shortage of horror stories from women who gave up their entire careers to be a stay-at-home mother to a man who only ended up abandoning him for the younger model and leaving her with nothing. And while I do agree with the adage that a man is not a plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that every relationship where there's only one financial provider is toxic. And I have to say, in this case, Daniel, her husband, is not the only financial provider. They're co-CEOs of the Ballerina Farm business. Hannah herself does not associate with the tradwife term, and I have to imagine that's a big reason why. But to be fair, most women who get lumped into the tradwife umbrella usually don't associate with the term. It's not very tradwife to call yourself a tradwife, you know what I mean? And honestly, anyone who actually does use the label is probably doing so for the express purpose of fetishizing the trope, but most women are not. Now, to people who share similar old-fashioned and religious ideals and goals, accounts like Hannah's feel warm, cozy, inspirational. But to many others, the Neelemans are just trust fund-enabled Nepo babies cosplaying as salt of the earth. Or pioneer burlesque. See, Ballerina Farm was not handed down from generations of agricultural laborers. It is in fact a 328-acre ranch that was purchased a few years ago for $2.75 million. So if you are watching your videos and you're thinking, wow, she's just like me, I can accomplish this lifestyle, you should know that her stove alone cost $30,000. And for this reason, a lot of people see these tradwife aesthetics as less of an appreciation for the domestic role and more of a flex from the leisure class. Basically, people are angry that she's spending all day making homemade breads and taking care of ducks, not because she has to, but because she can afford to. They see Hannah as being paid to act out a fantasy. But is that inherently wrong? Is that not what a bunch of other people on social media are doing? And I have to say I have some mixed opinions here. While I think a lot of these criticisms are fair, I also think that not enough billionaires are raising their kids on farms, and that raising a billionaire kid on a farm is probably the best chance of preserving their character and avoid them getting corrupted by their own financial situation. I mean, think about it. You check out the page, you see those kids putting work in at that farm, and I don't know about you, but everyone that I know who was raised on a farm has like 10 times the general life skills as the average person. Being born into money doesn't really bother me if you're at least using it in the right ways. and buying a farm and raising your kids to be self-sufficient is one of the righter ways. Either way, Hannah did a great job of not responding to the haters, letting it roll off her like water rolls off a duck, and eventually became predominantly well-loved and well-received, receiving almost 10 million followers on both TikTok and Instagram each. The hatred for Hannah seems to have died down, but then on July 20th, 2024, something would happen that would kick up that shitstorm of a hate tornado right back at Ballerina Farm. But this time, the target wasn't Hannah, it was her husband, Daniel. It started with a hit piece published to the Sunday Times by a Megan Agnew called "Meet the Queen of the Tradwives and Her 8 Children." It begins, Hannah Neeleman, known to her 9 million followers as Ballerina Farm, milks cows, gives birth without pain relief, and breastfeeds at beauty pageants. Is this an empowering new model of womanhood, or a hammer blow to feminism? And this article went completely viral. I won't leave you in the dark about how this family is single-handedly destroying all of feminism. I'll give you a point-by-point breakdown of all the claims and accusations being made here that are making people freak out and call Daniel a controlling evil monster who stole Hannah away from her dream of being a ballerina and turned her into a baby-making factory. Agnew brings up Hannah competing in the Miss American pageant as the first claim for how she has been oppressed. She writes, "Was this the ultimate act of empowerment, Neeleman doing what she wanted, or the ultimate demonstration of oppression, her tender body encased in spiky sequins?" Damn, so it's oppression now to do the things we want to do? What exactly is making Agnew think that Hannah had no autonomy in the decision-making of competing in this pageant when she has competed in pageants literally her entire life before Daniel was even a twinkle in her eye? Nope, it's just oppression. Damn, Simone Biles and Jordan Childs getting so oppressed this year at the Olympics. Now, before this journalist even steps foot in the home to start interviewing them, the shady undertones of this preconceived notion that Daniel is controlling have already begun. She writes, "I have flown across the breadth of America and driven through the mountains of rural Utah to ask her, if, that is, I can get her alone. She has just entered the house." I do love the way Agnew is absolutely glazing her husband before she cooks him, though. Look at what she says. "An all-American steak of a husband." A steak of a husband? Do we have to use the anti-horny spray, Megan? No, I'm stealing that one, though. The next big criticism brought up here is that the Neelemans, like other tradwives such as Nara Smith, are Mormon. The Mormon Church, also known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS, is a pretty controversial church, which I'm sure even the Mormons wouldn't disagree with. LDS communities are pretty well known for discouraging individuality and encouraging groupthink and conformity, and are also pretty well known for their excommunications and completely coldly cutting out disagreeable family members. In some communities, members have had issues being controlled by blackmail or being made too dependent on the church. This reputation, paired with the way Agnew phrases things like this, "We passed the family's minibus, a 15-seater. Is the aim to fill it? Someday, yeah," Daniel says. "We are getting old and worn out," Neeleman says, baby flourish strapped to her chest, sounding less sure. "So we'll see." Led readers to view Daniel as having trapped her into this religion and forcing her to be constantly pregnant, something Agnew previously seems to use as kind of an insult. But what people need to consider is that they were both Mormon when they met, and they were both raised Mormon. Not only that, but both Hannah and Daniel each have 8 other siblings. Growing up Mormon and having a big family is all they know, so there's really no reason to think that Daniel is the one who pressured Hannah into it any more than there is to think Hannah pressured Daniel into it. But moving right along, the next thing, and possibly the biggest thing that riled people up, was the story about how Daniel and Hannah got together. In what would become easily the most scrutinized part of this essay, Agnew writes, "He was 23 and she was nearly 2 years his junior when they were introduced by a mutual friend at a college basketball game. I saw her and I was ready to go," he says. "Sign me up. I was thinking, let's get married. But she wouldn't go on a date with me for 6 months. One day she mentioned to Daniel that she was getting the 5-hour flight from Salt Lake City to New York, back to Juilliard. She didn't realize his dad owned the airline. So Daniel was like, 'I'm on that same flight,' she says. I remember checking in and them saying, "You're 5A and you're 5B. I just thought, no way, that's crazy." Daniel smiles. I made a call. He had pulled strings at JetBlue, and so began their first date. People did not react to this well, with a lot of people being upset that he was even called a first date at all. They basically saw Daniel as creepy and desperate for not leaving her alone for half a year and then stalking her. And I think we can all agree that it's a bit unethical to use your father's airline connections to find your crush's exact location on a flight. In the HR world, I believe they call that a conflict of interests. And I really wanted to play devil's avocado here and say maybe she's just really good at dropping the handkerchiefs and she did tell him what flight she's on, but she also said that she didn't know who he was or who his dad was, so there was no reason for her to think that he would show up. Agnew continues, "Back then I thought we should date for a year before marriage," she continues, "so I could finish school and whatever. And Daniel was like, it's not going to work. We've got to get married now." After a month, they were engaged. 2 months after that, they were married, moving into an apartment Daniel rented on the Upper West Side. And 3 months after that, she was pregnant. The first Juilliard undergraduate to be expecting in modern history. And this is definitely moving extremely fast in my opinion, but also right on brand for anybody who went to Bible school. I think they send the boys off to their freshman year of college with an engagement ring already. You know, just in case. No condoms, just the ring. Now, this next paragraph by Agnew really paints a clear picture of the bad taste this should all be leaving in your mouth. "I look out into the vastness and I don't totally agree. Daniel wanted to live in the great western wilds, so they did. He wanted to farm, so they do. He likes date nights once a week, so they go. They have a babysitter on those evenings. He didn't want nannies in the house, so there aren't any. The only space earmarked to be Neeleman's own, a small barn she wanted to convert into a ballet studio, ended up becoming the kids' schoolroom." It's a grim narrative that paints Daniel as a selfish captor who's imprisoned Hannah and forced her to shrink herself so that he can live out his own fantasies. But I can't help but find signs that Agnew may just be manipulating absolutely everything she can to support a preconceived notion she already had about the family before even flying out to meet them. For example, why are date nights once a week being lumped in with all the other bad things, or even suggested as something Hannah wouldn't want? We always talk about the importance of continuing to prioritize dating your spouse, especially after marriage and kids. And here he is putting constant maintenance into that aspect of his marriage. How in the world is that now a bad thing? These were some other icky parts that people really clung on to. Daniel says Neeleman sometimes gets so ill from exhaustion that she can't get out of bed for a week. Objectively, that is horrible.
It's not lupus.
Now, in this next paragraph about Hannah's numerous home births, Agnew really tries to skew this as though Daniel is the only reason that Hannah only got an epidural once, the one time that he just so happened to not be there, something that a lot of people were pissed over. But in the same exact paragraph, Hannah says herself that she herself doesn't like taking the pain medication, and that the only reason she did was because this pregnancy was a lot more complicated than the other ones. And when Agnew writes that Hannah had to lower her voice, isn't it a bit of a stretch to suggest that Hannah was trying to make sure Daniel didn't find out about this epidural when she's talking to a journalist who's imaginably going to be publishing everything she says? I think Daniel knew and was okay with it. Again, this might seem nitpicky, but as someone who's really sensitive when I feel like someone is trying to compel how I'm supposed to think about something, these things just really stand out to me. And once you realize that Agnew does have a pretty potent bias that she's ham-fisting in here, a lot of these arguments come across as just really reaching. Like here, for example. Agnew's talking about the sequin gowns from the pageants, and she writes, "And the sequin gowns? Well, they used to be in her bedroom cupboard. But with all the other stuff, the cupboard got so full that there wasn't any more room. So Daniel put them in the garage." Here, Agnew seems to imply that this is just another method of Daniel's erasure of Hannah as a person, is shoving the pageant dresses away into the garage. And with the narrative that she's laid out so far, it may be easy for the viewer to see that as yet another red flag. But to me, a homeowner, it seems logistically reasonable. A bedroom closet is for things you wear regularly. She is not wearing an oppressive spiky sequined gown regularly. They'd be taking up so much space for no good reason, and storing them in the garage seems perfectly fair. And again here, Agnew complains, "I can't, it seems, get an answer out of Neeleman without her being corrected, interrupted, or answered for by either her husband or a child." And this is just a childish empirical statement. In fact, she has gotten several answers out of Hannah without being interrupted or corrected, and got to sit down with her alone for a significant period of time. And I personally found no instances of Daniel correcting Hannah throughout that article, just excitedly adding on, which any husband and co-CEO of a business would do when their entire family is being represented. I think one of the biggest takeaways that a lot of people really honed in on was the fact that Hannah was an amazing, accomplished ballerina and even got into Juilliard, one of the most prestigious artistic schools, only to drop out and become a homemaker. This was so unfathomable to most people that the only way they could really wrap their head around someone making such a decision would have to be out of duress or being forced to. Now, the most popular thing being commented on Ballerina Farm videos is Hannah's own quote, "I was a good ballerina." People are furious that to this day, Hannah is not still living out her life as a trained professional ballerina. Then again, most people don't know shit about ballet. The truth is that most ballerinas retire in their early 20s, just like Hannah did. Being an actual ballerina, not just a hobbyist, a Juilliard-trained professional, is a military-level commitment. The hours are long and grueling and painful. You literally don't have time for relationships. And if you have a strong enough stomach, Google what ballerinas' feet look like. Being a ballerina is also not even a lucrative career. Most ballerinas will make about $30,000 a year. It's not impossible to imagine that a woman might rather just marry a billionaire's son so that she can practice ballet whenever she wants to, instead of ruining her love for it by making it her job she relies on. Nonetheless, the article cemented a pretty clear narrative. Hannah Neeleman was a caged bird, robbed of her dream of getting to perform ballet at Juilliard, imprisoned by the face of patriarchy personified, Daniel Neeleman. She was a victim, and she needed to be saved. People began to heavily scrutinize Hannah's videos after this, looking for pretty much any further evidence they had of Daniel's crimes, and they would laser focus in on one video in particular, a video Hannah would later delete because of the backlash, a video now known simply as the egg apron video.
It was my birthday present from Daniel. Hoping their tickets to Greece.
Where's it from?
I don't know, the boys took it off.
I took it off.
It's from Ukraine.
So, plane tickets? Ooh, a hat I can wear in Greece.
It's not a hat.
It's not.
Oh, my egg apron!
Eggs in it.
It's great. They can gather eggs.
So cute. It's really cute. It's a cute one.
That's the best. You're welcome.
Thanks, honey.
Not for a long time.
This was the final proof the world needed to determine once and for all that Daniel Neeleman was indeed a whole-ass Disney villain. Here we have this naturally and effortlessly gorgeous, hard-working, multifaceted supermom who just wants to go to Greece. Something maybe not every family can accomplish, but certainly the son of a billionaire owner of multiple airlines can certainly accomplish. Only instead to receive an item designated for labor, one that many noted was not even gift wrapped. It really is up there with giving your wife a vacuum for Mother's Day, and his quick "you're welcome" before she even said thank you was not winning him any favors with the audience either. After this, you really couldn't go into either of their comment sections without dozens and dozens of people screaming at him to take her to Greece. Where women had previously chided, mocked, and ridiculed Hannah, they were now rising up as an army behind her to save her from her oppressor, or at the very least get her to Athens. Only problem is, Hannah doesn't want to be saved. After a couple of weeks of the entire world judging and hypothesizing about her life, Hannah broke her silence with this video.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a reporter come into our home to learn more about our family and business. We thought the interview went really well, very similar to the dozens of interviews we had done in recent memory. We were taken back, however, when we saw the printed article, which shocked us and shocked the world by being an attack on our family and my marriage, portraying me as oppressed, with my husband being the culprit. This couldn't be further from the truth. Nothing we said in the interview implied this conclusion, which leads me to believe the angle taken was predetermined. For Daniel and I, our priority in life is God and family. Everything else comes second. The greatest day of my life was when Daniel and I were married 13 years ago. Together we have built a business from scratch. We've brought 8 children into this world and have prioritized our marriage all along the way. We are co-parents, co-CEOs, co-diaper changers, kitchen cleaners, and decision makers. We are one. And I love him more today than I did 13 years ago. We have many dreams still to accomplish. We aren't done having babies. We are excited for our new farm store to open, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for the rest of it. But for now, I'm doing what I love most, being a mother, wife, a businesswoman, a farmer, a lover of Jesus, and making meals from scratch.
So here's what we're left with. Do we believe Hannah or not? No, seriously, I think it's interesting that we respect women as independent, autonomous, worthy of being believed, until what they believe is different than what we believe. It's certainly true that the way Hannah lives is not what most women want. That's why the average number of children is 2.5, not 5. But could it be remotely possible that she's happy? Is it so impossible that she is telling us that this is what she wants because it's actually what she wants? Is it possible even that Hannah is with Daniel because Hannah loves Daniel? Now, you don't have to like Hannah Neeleman or Ballerina Farm. To be completely honest with you, it is overpriced yuppie shit. I mean, $50 for a bag of flour? That is highway robbery of the highest order. Is it possible that there are no victims in this family? Let's take it one step further, if you'll be so charitable with me. Could it at all be possible that maybe, just maybe, Daniel is even a good dad? Look, Hannah says it herself, he is extremely hands-on with the kids. It seems like he's constantly holding a baby while guiding the boys through their chores, and you might not know this, but Daniel does the butchering at that farm, and butchering is very hard work. I certainly don't want to do it. He puts in the emotional maintenance with his weekly date nights. He does support his wife in her pageants, and he does keep her dancing. One common quote that keeps getting left on all of Hannah's videos is this one. Some boys take a beautiful girl and hide her away from the rest of the world. But with about 20 million collective followers across all platforms and recently winning the whole Miss American pageant, who exactly is he hiding her from? If all natural home births, living on a farm, and raising a Little Leagues team worth of kids doesn't appeal to you, that's fine. That's actually the popular opinion, but there is no need to hyperbolically exaggerate details about someone else's life just to demonize their lifestyle. Hannah's life is not a slap in the face to feminism, it's something feminism allows her to do. You can't just strip Hannah of all of her autonomy and agency just because she's doing things differently than the way you would do them. She's a big girl. She can make her own choices. Hannah has now published her own version of her story the way she wanted it to be heard on her Ballerina Farm's About Us page, where she once again describes the same things she told Megan Agnew, that she adores her husband, cherishes motherhood, still makes time for dance, and that it was indeed also her dream to own the farm, but this time without biased, leading undertones to undermine everything she's saying. The irony here is that Agnew set out to write a hit piece on tradwife culture and its war on feminism. But what she ended up doing was attacking a businesswoman, stripping her of her agency, and leaving her to scramble to reclaim her own narrative. So who really victimized Hannah Neeleman here? her husband, or a group of radical feminists who forgot that women are allowed to stay home and be wives if they want to? My final conclusion is that Hannah does not need saving. I personally am not going to be spending any of my time arguing in comment sections for some billionaire's daughter-in-law to go to Greece. But what do you guys think? Do you think this is secretly a low-key blink twice situation, or just a regular marriage built off love, consent, and probably a handful of imperfections sprinkled in there? Do you even consider Hannah to be a tradwife, considering she is literally a co-CEO? Do you think Daniel is a giant red flag, or honestly a good-hearted dude with flaws like the rest of us? Are you offended by tradwife culture? Do you think Ballerina Farm is an unethical farce or a valid business and homestead? Or have you got one of those weird, nuanced opinions? Once you hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my live streams, please do type out your comments and responses to this down below. Thank you guys so extremely much for watching all the way until the end. I'm having so much fun doing these longer video essays, and that is all thanks to your support. So that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Until soon.